this is Dan Ritchie, developer of Project Dog Waffle Howler. I'd like to show you some techniques we used to use in the old days. One of my first industry jobs was working on the show Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog. It was a sort of a fantasy show set in Ireland that featured monsters every week of some sort. It was sort of came after the whole Power Rangers thing and some of those kind of shows. So you can imagine the type of things we would work on, crazy creatures and that sort of thing. But we would get these background plates or these scenes that were shot on 16 millimeter film, and we would have to make a single frame of these to work on. We would take these CG monsters and composite them over these background plates, basically. And the film of the time, 16 millimeter film, was very grainy, and you could tell by looking at a single frame of it that it was just a still frame. And we had to do something to make these shots look a lot better. So what we would do is we would take about 3 or 4 frames from the film, as long as the camera wasn't moving. They would usually provide these shots of the backgrounds for us, and we would average these frames together, and this would reduce the noise, basically random noise. Film grain is basically random noise, and when you average them together, it actually averaged out the noise while keeping the original image more or less intact, and it basically produced a much better quality background plate for us to work with. And this technique can be useful even today with all the digital cameras and things. Say you took a photograph and you wanted to get the best quality. Say you only had a camera that could take photographs and save as a JPEG. Well, if you would take 3 or 4 frames on a tripod, you could average them together, and that would average out some of the JPEG noise, some of the crazy artifacts and things you get with JPEG. Or if you took a low light photograph, you would naturally get a lot of noise. So taking about 3 or 4 of these frames and averaging them together would reduce that noise and make a much better quality image. Or if you had to grab something from a webcam or something where the quality of the image is pretty low, as long as you had a more or less a still sequence where the camera's not moving too much, you could accomplish the same thing. And in fact, we have a camera stabilization filter since version 7.2 under animated filters, stabilize. And this will let you take the camera motion out of a animation or an AVI or a video. So that's another way you can get these still frames. You could remove the camera motion and then use 3 or 4 of those frames like I've done here. You can see there's a little bit of motion there. So we're going to pick one spot where there's a couple of frames where there's not a lot of motion. It happens in this case to be right at the beginning. And I want to make a still frame out of this with the errors averaged out. And if this were a film shot from film, there would have been a lot of noise in there and that sort of thing. And you would see that averaging these few frames together would make a much better quality image. So under Windows Utilities, there's a filter called Average Frames to Reduce Noise. I'm going to click on that. Just the only parameter is the number of frames you want to average. It will start with the frame you have selected. You'll usually see a little orange box around it on the film strip up here. I'm going to average 3 frames, or I might do 4. You can do up to 30 frames. As long as your camera's not moving, it's not going to be a problem. If your camera were moving, you get sort of a blur effect, which we don't really want in this case. So I'm going to hit OK. And there you can see that we've got a nice high quality, or higher quality at least, image than we had before. And that is just one technique we can use in the visual effects industry, or in photography, or for perhaps several other uses that will produce a much cleaner image. And now that we've done that, we can go ahead and free this animation. Just be sure we're still on that frame we just worked on. I'll click free from the animation menu, and I'll just go ahead and close that. And now we have basically a higher quality still frame to work with. We could always go in and do additional things such as sharpen if we wanted to use this for some other type of output. But we basically covered one way to produce better quality images in Howler 8.2. And talk to you again later.